Hi there, yep, you guessed it, that's right. Great and glorious, you be famous one day, Nick Cha! Here yet again, back on the camera, just talking, that's what we do here on YouTube. We open our mouths and we talk. Cool. The last video I did, I talked about like anthropomorphization, which is when humans treat things which aren't alive as if they are. It ties in very nicely with the idea of pareidolia. Now, I don't know whether you were like me, a certain number of years ago when I was younger, I was an addict, a connoisseur of bad quality science fiction TV that was always shown at a certain time of night, and it always made more sense at that time of night because like if you're working all day, you're exhausted, and you want to stay up because you want to be naughty and think that you're having a life. So you watch something like The Outer Limits or, Alfred Hitchcock Presents and all the rest of that sort of stuff. But one of these shows I saw had this female character in a mental home whose mind would perceive faces out of random patterns, always faces, always faces. And the doctor would say that this is something called pareidolia, which means that you're programmed, you're pre-wired to look out for things that look like faces. So, from infancy you can recognize the face of your mother, the face of your father, and so on and so forth. You can recognize other people, you pay attention to all the minuscule facial expressions on a person so you can interact with them better. And this is what you're hardwired to do as a human being. When there's random patterns, we humans try and find order out of chaos, and it would usually manifest in terms of a face, which I thought was quite interesting. But that's a variety of pareidolia. But when we're thinking about anthropomorphization in the different levels, of course, I've already spoken about the idea of having something like, a device which doesn't work, and you got to scream at it, "Work, you bastard!" And that's a form of anthropomorphization. My feeling is that this natural wiring, this thing that we're created with, has a certain element of flexibility, nature versus nurture. Nature, the stuff that you're born with, your hardware and software that you're born with, plus nurture, which is when the software can rewire the meanings of how all these things can operate. And I spoke about in the last video certain individuals of certain religious traits who are still very primitive, still very Bronze Age or Stone Age with their ideas. And this manifests in terms of their religiosity, basically. But what about the here and now and today? Do we still have the same kind of use and abuse of anthropomorphization? To a certain degree. I mean, if you think about it, what is like the main trigger that makes us want to recognize something? It's an emotional trigger. It's a sense of unity or connection or connectivity or a sense of joy you get from seeing someone that you love. It's a reward. It's a stimulus response type situation, conditioning, working on your emotions. So if there's people who can manipulate those emotions, they can manipulate the behavior of an individual towards various different objects, and actually, or indeed ideas. I mean, this is just hypothetical stuff, maybe. But let's take the idea of loyalty or patriotism. But where do these things come from? To a certain extent, that would be like your hard wiring, the way that you're created to be dedicated to your tribe for the survival of the tribe. But also that can be sculpted to mean loyalty to your nation in times of warfare, loyalty to people who don't actually mean anything to you, loyalty to people you've never actually met. I feel the conspiracy theorists are actually playing upon this. I mean, obviously not just the conspiracy theorists, obviously the politicians, the media, especially media which deals with fiction, because it focuses on concepts which are rather amorphous or rather vague maybe, and it crystallizes the meaning through training you via the nurture aspect, the nurture part of the nature versus nurture bit. So the software starts being adjusted. And so you start reacting instinctively, or in the manner of someone who is driven by instincts, to feel protection for or feel animosity against something which might not actually exist. Just like a tribal person beside a tribal carving, giving this thing love, respect, and adoration, as if it was real, when in fact it's not alive. Okay, it's physically real, but it's not alive. I think this is just more proof of, or more possible proof of how primitive we really are, and how much we've got to try and escape beyond that. And I don't think we can do that with spirituality. I think we can do that with the right variety of education, and with the right variety of perspective. Maybe evolution, intellectual evolution, is just about relying less upon your emotional responses and more upon overriding those with a harder, possibly colder form of deep intellectual analysis. But then we'll be going into the realms of morality, and on the other hand, is morality just created to manipulate us? Too many questions, too few minutes on a fucking YouTube video. Good fortune, God and or Goddess and or none of the above bless. Nick Dutch, signing out for now.